Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. My name is Emmanuel. I am with the Delaware Developmental Disabilities Council. I am here today with my co-host, Laura Green. Welcome back to our show. Today we are super excited to highlight Brain Injury Awareness Month and also March being Developmental Disability Awareness Month. We wanted to take a moment to highlight, to put a spotlight on Brain Injury Awareness Month. And we are here with two special guests. I am super excited. I've been waiting to do this for quite some time since we started this video series. So before we get into that, I want to remind everyone, if you have not already, subscribe to our channel. Please subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss an episode of the Let's Talk About It video series. I want to welcome Amy and John. And I'm going to let Amy and John give you their background and some of their titles. Their titles are pretty long and in depth, so I'm going to let them share that with us. I want to welcome you both to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. So Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you to share with the audience a little bit of your background, your career field, and anything you would like for the audience to know.
Okay, I'll try to keep it economical, which is not my forte.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, I started working in the field in like 37 years ago this year. I started working with people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, and intellectual disabilities. And then I moved on to working with people with mental health disabilities. And now I work for the state of Delaware, and I've worked for the state of Delaware for 20 years. And I absolutely love working for the state of Delaware. And I work for the Delaware Disabilities, Developmental Disabilities, and Intellectual Disability Services. So I enjoy doing that as well. And my title there is Program Evaluator. And that's a snazzy name for somebody who goes out into group homes and day programs and work programs, and we make sure that the providers are upholding the standards. So that's one of my titles. I'm also a writer and I'm a speaker, and I'm also I'm a director on the Brain Injury Association of Delaware. And along with that comes me doing a support group. I'm a facilitator of a support group for the Brain Injury Association of Delaware. So I wear a lot of hats, which is good because I like doing that. I'm never bored, ever bored. So I've been doing this kind of work for a very long time, and I really, really thoroughly enjoy it. And I love working with people with brain injuries and trying to help them through and manage their brain injuries. So go ahead, John.
Sure. Laura, Amy, Emmanuel, it's my privilege as well to be here. After hearing Amy's introduction, I feel rather lazy in comparison to the number of things that she does. And we are grateful, so grateful to have Amy in the community doing what she's doing, as well as what the Developmental Disabilities Council does for people with disabilities living in the state of Delaware.
Thank you, John.
Again, my name is John McNeil. I'm the director of the Delaware State Council for Persons with Disabilities. The mission of the State Council for Persons with Disabilities is to bring together in one council policymakers, advocates, people with disabilities, to unite in one message and one methodology to try to ensure that people with disabilities have the resource, services, and program access to live most independently in the community. It's one of the great privileges of my life to serve in this role. Previously, I was the state of Delaware's ADA Title II coordinator, as well as the Delaware Department of Transportation's ADA Title II Section 504 coordinator. My experience with regards to working with people with disabilities goes back to over 25 years, where I've served as a independent living specialist for people with disabilities for Center for Independent Living, Independent Resources Incorporated. Probably one of the most fun and important jobs of my life, largely because I know how Centers for Independent Living can impact individuals with disabilities, as there's many times, frequently, no neon signs saying help is here when you've had a traumatic injury. I did have a traumatic injury several years ago, 31 years ago this year, where I had a spinal cord injury, and as part of that, also a traumatic brain injury as well. So I'm delighted to be here, and really look forward to our conversation on this St. Patrick's Day. So in celebration of Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and in celebration of the Brain Injury Awareness Month, and on St. Patrick's Day. I look forward to your questions and being a part of informing and educating the community.
Wow. I didn't realize I was with such celebrities. I think I need to catch up. You guys in conjunction, you guys do a lot. I mean, I didn't realize you were also a writer and a speaker. So I'm gonna have to pick your brain a little bit and get
I
more
welcome it.
conversation about that. John, I always knew you were up to good. So I do know that the work that I now do isn't primarily because the people that came before me and the things that you guys have done to open up opportunities for people with disabilities. So I thank you guys for the hard work that you have done to make a way for the younger generation, such as myself, to be able to follow in some of those footsteps. So go ahead.
It takes a village. It takes a lot of people in a community. And, I'm not a very good speaker, obviously, because I totally forgot to say that I'm a survivor. I like to call myself an overcomer of a brain injury, traumatic brain injury. I totally forgot all that. And that's actually one of the main reasons I'm here. So that's part of my many titles that brings me to this show too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, for our audience that may not know or may not be aware, what is a brain injury, and is there different levels of a brain injury?
Yeah, Emmanuel. Here, brain injury is defined as there's two different kinds of brain injuries. Well, there's a traumatic brain injury, which comes from a blow or a penetrating injury or a jolt to your brain. Me, for example, I was a victim of a violent crime when I was 9. So that was 1973. That will be 48 years ago since like this year. So that's a long time ago. So you could have an impact to your head from a car crash or violence, or people who do sports, concussion kinds of things. And that can give you a TBI. Or you could have an acquired brain injury, which comes from things like a stroke or a heart attack actually can give you a TBI, or some kind of bleed that you have in your brain from like I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's called or a tumor. A tumor could give you a TBI or an acquired brain injury. And that just means that it didn't come from a traumatic blow. There are different levels of brain injury, and it's based on this thing called the Glasgow Coma scale. I'm looking at my notes because I don't remember. I have to remember all this stuff. So, and basically the Glasgow Coma scale rates, it's defined by how conscious you are after a brain injury. So and it's 3 ratings. There's mild, moderate, and severe. And mild just means you may have a brief or no loss of consciousness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have difficulties after having a mild brain injury, like a concussion, for example. People sometimes think that, oh, it's just a concussion. Well, that concussion can cause you all kinds of, could cause you migraines, it could cause you balance issues, it could cause you seeing difficulties, hearing difficulties, it could cause you memory issues, a whole host of different things. So when I think of brain injury, I never kind of look at it as it's just a concussion, or it's just a mild traumatic, or it's just a mild brain injury. I believe that all brain injuries have a serious impact on your life. That's just my personal belief and what I've known from talking and working with people with brain injuries. And then there's a moderate, and the moderate brain injury, that means that you're unconscious for up to 24 hours. And a severe brain injury is marked by, in a mild brain injury and severe injury have 2 things in common. You can also see the brain injury on neuroimaging. Those are the other 2 things that you have in common with the severe brain injury. The severe brain injury, you could be in a coma which exceeds 24 hours. So those are the ratings or the definitions of the mild, of like what's worse and what's not as bad. But they all have an effect on your life. They all impact your life for a lifetime. Many times.
Wow. So as you go through the different levels, I got no idea that it was. I knew about a traumatic brain injury and inquiring one and that way, but I never realized the levels, so to speak. Because typically when you hear brain injury, you just hear brain injury. You don't hear, oh, it's a severe one, it's a mild one.
Right.
Unless you really know the person and have a conversation or dialogue.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. This is a good question. It's a very good question.
So and I know this question wasn't on my original list. So with the different levels, are there different ways that it affects you? Because I know you said that it typically affects you a lifetime, no matter what level you're on. Go ahead. Can those different levels affect different things?
Yes, and it really all depends on what part of your brain is hurt in whatever kind of brain injury you've acquired. If it's a traumatic brain injury, or if it's a stroke or a tumor, where that tumor was, where that stroke happened, what part of your brain was injured in a traumatic brain injury. Because the problem with traumatic brain injuries is, let's say you're in a car accident, and let's say you're sitting at a light, and someone comes up behind you and hits you at 25 miles an hour. Your body thrusts forward and then backward, and your brain sloshes kind of like and moves in your skull. And then it creates a bruise on the front of your brain, and it creates a bruise or a possible bleed, excuse me, on the back of your brain. Those injuries can cause different kinds of complexities and different kinds of symptoms than if you were in a car and you were hit, or if you were in a car and you were hit from the side. Then you go side to side, your body rocks side to side, and your brain is hit on each side of itself on the inside of your skull. So those injuries then affect different portions of your brain, because different portions of your brain do different things. Your speech could be affected. For example, for me, I was beaten, and I was hanged. So I had an anoxic brain injury, and I was beaten very badly around the face and the head because I was a victim of violent crime. And so for me, I had speech difficulty. I had, I literally could not walk. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I could hear everything that everyone was saying, but I could not respond. I could understand what they meant, I just could not respond. So I had to learn how to do all those motor functions all over again. I literally couldn't point at you. I couldn't point my finger at you. I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do any of those things. So it really depends on what part of your brain was traumatized in either of those, whether it's an acquired brain injury or traumatic brain injury.
If I can do that, in addition, there are a number of, I think it's also important to note that there's a number of ways that a brain injury can affect you. And that could be, we have some who have short-term memory loss, and that could be as simple as having a friend or a family member in a room who comes into a room and introduces themselves, and literally moments later completely forgets who that individual is and what that conversation is about, or long-term memory loss as well, which could be completely forgetting about one's past and having rebuilt a life from all anew. In addition, to that, there's also there are certain behavioral aspects that can be a part of a traumatic brain injury, outbursts, a heightened level of frustration. And those things, and it's one of the real challenges of those, because largely because they're invisible. They're not necessarily something that you can see. You can have somebody who has a traumatic brain injury who has all their physical attributes, but because of a brain injury, may not have control of emotions. And oftentimes that is confused with mental illness. And that is a real challenge, because having somebody identify or diagnosed, whether it be through something that happens in the community, and maybe law enforcement is called or involved, it may mean that somebody doesn't get the type of assistance that they need with regards to communication that they need in order to get the proper message across. So it's extremely frustrating. I tend to believe that traumatic brain injuries, particularly brain injuries that occur where it's not something that's obvious, are some of the more frustrating types of disabilities that you could have living in the community, because they are so misunderstood, because they are not obvious, because they're not something they can see, and because there's just limited resources and services to address them. So, but one other thing that I wanted to mention is with regards to brain injury. Brain injury doesn't have to happen, after birth either. Brain injury can happen before birth. Such things as oxygen to the brain.
Absolutely.
The fetal process is another way that somebody can acquire a brain injury. So it's very, very broad, and it's easy to get fixed on one type of stereotype as to what a brain injury is. But it's rather complex, which creates all the more level of frustration on how to serve and provide resources for people in the community who very much need them.
I would tend to agree with you there, John. every brain injury is different. I mean, I talk to so many people who have brain injuries and they all have different symptoms. Some people don't process well. I mean, speaking to them, part of their brain injury means that part of their memory issue is that they don't process information. Some people don't have executive functioning, like executive reasoning. So they will go out and do things, or they can't make decisions about making order in their lives. They can't remember to pay their bills, or they can't organize things, or they have outbursts, they have frustration, they have depression, they have problems with their eyes and problems with their ears and headaches. And there's like a whole host of symptoms that you could have after a brain injury, and any kind of brain injury. And it really truly all depends on how bad it was and where the injury was. But seriously, you could have a concussion and have in your 50s and have more problems than someone like me who had like a very violent brain injury or like a moderate brain injury when I was 9. I mean, it just, and that's another factor, is your age. When you get the brain injury makes a big difference on like how severe it is, and when you get it makes a big difference in how you progress through life later and how you recover from those things.
Wow, you guys shared so much information. We could almost have a series just on this topic alone.
I agree.
I'm
ready. You want to do that? I'm ready.
We really might have to talk about it, because I think today we're only going to touch the surface of a brain injury, and I think there's so much information. And John, I appreciate you sharing about brain injuries being some of the brain injuries being things that you can't see. And I think when most people talk about brain injury, there's a lot of misunderstood information. There's also a lot of misunderstanding of people, because you can't see it. It's not physical. It's not, right in front of you. And I have talked to several people who have been misunderstood because of their brain injury, and being able to receive even services and things of that nature, because it's not like a big bump on your forehead or something to alert to say, hey, it's a brain injury. So I just think there's a lot of misunderstood people, but also the information that's being shared. And as I think about services, speaking about Delaware, is there services in Delaware for people with brain injury? I know, Amy, you mentioned the support group. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and any other services either you or John can share about the other services in Delaware?
Sure, I'll tell you what, John, you can, could you share your services first, and then I'll get into the support group. How's that?
That sounds fine. Thank you. One of the real challenges in the state of Delaware, and I don't think it's just unique to Delaware, I think in a lot of states, but we are talking about Delawareans with disabilities in our Let's Talk About It segment here. And it is a real challenge. There used to be what's called a brain injury waiver. And that was a Medicaid waiver program for individuals who had brain injuries that has kind of found its way back into, for some, in the aging in adults with physical disabilities waiver, and in other cases it could be in the developmental disabilities, Division of Developmental Disability Services waiver. So there are services out there, from a Medicaid perspective, but again, Brain injury is so unique. And again, I think the invisibleness sometimes of it creates challenges, particularly when it comes to getting that healthcare need that you want, because oftentimes it relies on, the capacity of living in the community and being able to, perform certain types of functions, for instance, self-care. And I think our Medicaid waiver system is too focused on that as opposed to, what an individual's broader needs are. With regards to, some of the services that are out there, it could be anything from the Division of Vocational Rehab Services to the Aging and Disabilities Resource Center, to be able to contact and get information about different types of technology that may be available in the community. Delaware Assistive Technology Initiative. There are programs out there to help people get, back on their feet again after a traumatic brain injury, to everything, like I said, from technology to home modifications to the ability to be able to drive again, to go through rehabilitation services for that. But, I'll say again, and I think that's one of the important things to be talking about brain injury more broadly, is really to say that, in Delaware, probably the thing that we need most is a better understanding and more capabilities for finding the professionals that we need that deal directly and have an expertise in brain injury. As you travel throughout the state, like most things in the state of Delaware, they're kind of top heavy. And I mean that from top heavy from, the state perspective, north to south, more than I mean anything else. If you live in more metropolitan areas like Newcastle County, there are more services available with regards to, having, both a trauma and acute care center for people who have injuries in the state. And those they diminish as you go further down the state, which creates a huge challenge for the experts that you need to help navigate your way through, mostly the medical aspects of having a brain injury, which oftentimes makes us rely on out-of-state services. And again, anybody who's suffered from a traumatic brain injury, a significant and traumatic brain injury, may have trouble navigating up and down the state, let alone trying to get out of state. So it's a veritable web of challenges that make it really hard to get the services that you need. And then there are smaller programs like the programs that we have with the Brain Injury Committee, the State Brain Injury Committee, where we have, of course, some funding that's available for doing modifications and buying, helping individuals get the technology that they need, not just to be in the community, but to be a part of the community. We know that far too many people who suffer significant traumatic brain injuries, there's not enough services in the state to even keep them in state. Oftentimes people with traumatic brain injuries, particularly and acquired brain injuries, find themselves having to live at long-term care facilities outside of the state simply because they're not, either a lack of housing or a lack of support for people to live in their own homes, or even in post-acute settings. We do everything that we can to assure that people are not, have the option to not have to rely on long-term care settings. But even with regards to long-term care settings in the state, there are very few who will take an individual with a significant traumatic brain injury. So family members will have to travel out of state frequently to be able to provide probably the most important role that they can, and that is as a supporter and an advocate of a person with a significant disability of any type. That's what family members do. Probably the most important role is to be an advocate, to be the eyes and ears, and sometimes the voices of those that they care about and they love. And if you're traveling out of state, or if it's not close enough by, sometimes playing that role is extremely challenging, which is detrimental to not just the quantity of life, but also the quality of life, or vice versa. Both are equally important. So there's a lot of work that that we have to do here in the state of Delaware to improve the information output, and from both a macro and micro level. So we work very hard. That's part of the responsibility and the goals of the State Brain Injury Council, which is under the purview of the State Council for Persons with Disabilities. But we've made some groundwork, but we have a long ways to go.
Thank you, John, for all that information. And before we close out, I'm going to have you share how someone can possibly get more information about the Brain Injury Fund. Amy, can you share a little bit about the Brain Injury Group, Brain Injury Survivor Group, excuse me?
Yes.
And how someone can join that as well?
Yes. Basically, we're normally an in-person group, and we normally have it before the pandemic, before the pandemic. Hopefully post-pandemic, we can get back to eventually getting back to more normal kind of setup where we see one another the second Thursday of the month. But what happened last March was we went to Zoom. So if anyone, and I'm the facilitator, and anyone who is a survivor, a caretaker, a friend, a family member of someone with a brain injury can be on our groups. And they're Zoom just like this is. And basically we have new people coming every month, and those days of the month are the second Thursday of the month and the fourth Thursday of the month. And I did it I have two of them because of the pandemic, and I knew people would be stressed out. So instead of doing one, I decided to do two. We have I'd say we get between 10 and 15 people on that group. And it's basically a support group, but I'll be honest with you and say that we don't just support each other. We learn about new information. People bring resources that they've utilized to the group, and then they tell the group about them. They share their successes. They share their struggles. We have speakers that come on. Actually, Emmanuel, you were one of our speakers at the group, and we were happy to have you. And so we have a lot of different things that we try to do in this time frame between 6:30 at night and 8:30 in the evening. So we try to get all that in. And I'll be honest with you, it's been a real success on Zoom. And I think that has to do with part of the problem. Part of the issue is that some of our groups, we used to have a group in every county. And some of our groups have closed down because they were in facilities like AI DuPont, which can't take any more people coming in, or they were in facilities like PAM Rehabilitation Center, and they had their own support group there, or they were in facilities like Point of Hope, which is it's like a day program for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, but they also serve people with brain injury. But the Brain Injury Association of Delaware has strived to make this support group like the heart of the Brain Injury Association of Delaware. And so basically, if you would like to attend, just go to www.biaofde.org and log in and look up the support and resources tab. And there'll be, or we're getting a new website in April. And that new website, you'll be able to look up support groups as a search word, and it'll take you to the support groups. Right now, you can look up support and it'll bring you to a form, and that form will ask you, what do you need? Write support groups in there and write your name and your email, and that email will come to me, and or someone in the agency will send it to me, and I'll contact you and I will invite you to the group by sending you a Zoom link. So it's all done on Zoom. It's also Brain Injury Awareness Month, as we know, and the Brain Injury Association of Delaware, I have to plug this, I must, or, you know, they're gonna get me if I don't plug this. We have a Go Green campaign, and Go Green is the color of Brain Injury Awareness Month. And so the Go Green campaign is to support people with brain injuries. Put a light outside your door, a green light outside your door, or put them inside your house so people can see them. Or if you're a survivor or a family member, put lights all over your house that are green or inside your house so it shows the community that you support people with brain injuries. And the other thing that I would like to say is that we're accepting donations throughout the month for Go Green, and we're trying to make sure that we get some more donations for the Go Green Brain Injury Awareness Month. And you can send those, you can go on to that same website, which is www.biaofde.org/donations, and donate to the Brain Injury Association of Delaware, so we can continue our programming and expand, because we're trying to expand our resources. We're trying to expand what we do in the community and throughout the state of Delaware. And we cover the whole state. And we're affiliated with the Brain Injury Association of America. So we're a nonprofit organization. So I had to plug that, have to plug that. But the support group is wonderful, and people find great community in it. And that is something that they said that is missing from their lives, especially during the pandemic, but in life in general. They don't find people who understand them. John had spoken about that earlier. So when they come to the brain injury support group, they find people who get them. You know, we get them. We might not have the same exact injury in the same exact spot, but we really understand what they're going through. So we try to support each other and help each other out. And it's really a wonderful group, and I'm proud and honored to be the facilitator of that group. Thank you for asking, Emmanuel.
Thank you for sharing that. As you said, I've been to one of your groups, and just the atmosphere, the feeling of the understanding and connection. You know, literally, the one time I joined, I literally watched everybody kind of work through and help each other through their own issues.
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever,
what it's there for.
Or whatever the challenge was. You know, they all came together. They all gave input. You know, some people was like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And it was like, you didn't need a doctor with a white coat on to write you a prescription. You had a group of people who understood. It was like, well, you know what? When I couldn't sleep, I did XYZ. So maybe you could try XYZ, and if it works for you, let me know. If it doesn't, let me know, and I'll tell you something else. So it was good to see everybody just come together in unison to work through this problem, to work through whatever the challenge was at that time. So I do know it to be beneficial because I watched people when they got information that they kind of lit up a little bit. You know, they don't
Yeah.
feel like they're alone. So to witness that from the outside, it was just truly amazing. But now I got to put you on the spot. So you said everybody gotta, have something green or a green candle or anything like that. So do you got anything green in your house right now?
My shirt. My shirt is green. It's a really dark green. I'll be honest with you. You put me on the spot. I don't have a green light bulb. So boo on Amy Kratz.
No,
Shame on you for doing that to me, but that's okay. I deserve it. I totally deserve it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You wear your green all year long by supporting people and facilitating those groups and really being a voice for people. So you get a pass. You don't have to put a candle in
Oh, thank goodness.
in your window.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I appreciate it.
But thank you for sharing that. I'll be sure to put the website in the description of this video. So if you are watching it, you can click on the link and go right to the Brain Injury Association's website. John, I want to go back to you before we close out. We're just near the end of this conversation, but I want to know how people can access the brain injury. I guess it's called the Brain Injury Fund through the Brain Injury Committee. How can someone access
It's the
that?
Brain Injury Trust Fund. And to do my own shameful, selfish plug, what is important about both the State Council for Persons with Disabilities and the Brain Injury Committee? They're both legislatively, statutorily required. So our funding comes directly from the state legislature for both the State Council for Disabilities, and like I said, under its purview comes the Brain Injury Committee, the State Brain Injury Committee. What is vitally important to the State Brain Injury Committee is to have individuals who themselves have had a traumatic brain injury, survivors of brain injury, family members, and advocates for people with who have sustained a brain injury to be a part of it. Because our role is to advise policymakers, legislators, and most specifically the legislative body with regards to what the needs of people who have had traumatic brain injuries, or brain injuries are in the community. Nobody can tell that story better than the brain injury survivors themselves, and nobody can tell what the needs are better than those individuals and their family members. So, our membership is not something that is a governor appointed position. So it's really a show up 3 or 10 meetings and you're a voting member. But I can't tell you, I think the one thing that we need more than anything is more, eloquent, articulate voices, informed voices with regards to personal experience and what the needs in the community are. So to be able to find out more about that, just go to the State Council for Persons with Disabilities website, which is www.scpd.delaware.gov. And under our State Council for Persons with Disabilities website, within our State Council for Persons with Disabilities website, is a lot of information with regards to resources, services that are provided, information about traumatic brain injuries, about brain injury, and most importantly, to your point, is an application form, a fillable application form for applying for a resources with regards to funding resources, from everything from neurotherapy to home modifications to electronics, any number of things. We're pretty open-minded as to what those funds can be utilized for. The most important thing to remember is, Medicaid is often thought about as the payer of last resort. That is not the case. The Brain Injury Trust Fund is really, when it comes to acquiring the funds, is really the payer of last resort. So, if you're somebody who's a Medicaid recipient, Medicaid will typically have to have stated that they won't pay for it, as well as any other healthcare insurance provider. But we encourage everybody to apply. We can walk anybody through that process. And again, we're very open to what those needs may be. And we're often ourselves educated and become newly informed to different types of needs that are out in the community, that can be of resource to somebody, like I said, not just becoming more independently in the community, but more importantly, becoming a part of the community. So again, that application can be found at www.scpd.delaware.gov. And feel free to give us a call. And most importantly, feel free to join our meetings. Our meetings are monthly. And if you want to on what policies, what programs are available for people who have brain injuries in Delaware, our committee is, that's its purpose. That's full, singular, primary purpose. So we look forward to hopefully through this wonderful outlet and this opportunity on Let's Talk About It to hopefully get some folks who want to make a difference to be able to participate with the committee.
All right, John and Amy, thank you for all that information, especially about the support groups and then the Brain Injury Trust Fund, I believe you called it.
The Brain Injury Trust Fund and the Brain Injury Committee.
Thank you for that. So, John, I know you. Before we get to closing this out, I know you mentioned the application process, and Amy, you mentioned your support groups. I imagine that your support groups are your support groups just for Delawareans, or can other people join them from other states?
We have other people joining us from other states. We have people from, we had somebody from Massachusetts join us because she was in school in Boston, but her family lives here. We have a member of our support group who just moved to Pennsylvania, so he still joins us. So actually, anyone can join our group as long as they go online and make sure that they send me an email. And I usually like to try to talk to them and find out what their issues are, because I like to not that they're not allowed to attend or that I'm screening for people out or anything. Just because sometimes I'd like to be able to know if they have a specific issue, we can discuss that issue at the time that they're there. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull people in and keep them there. I want to have relevant topics to the people that attend. And so I do, every once in a while, I ask people, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to hear? What kinds of things are you interested in? But frequently, as we're speaking, I pick those things up and write them down. And then I'll go out in the community and find somebody to do a speaking engagement on it. Or we do some kind of creative concept, or I'll look something up and ask a question and it will start a whole conversation. But yes, I'd like people, it doesn't matter where they live. It's Zoom. We can have up to 100 people, 150 people. And that would be wonderful if we had 150 people. We've never had that many before. We're striving though. We're striving.
So I hear you. I hear you just put a goal out there. You have a
Yeah.
goal to
Yeah.
To reach 150 people on Zoom. So
That would be great. That would be great.
I'm cheering.
Emmanuel, if I could, I just want to say with regards
Go
to
ahead.
both the SCPD, the State Council for Persons with Disabilities, and the State Brain Injury Committee, they're primarily geared towards Delawareans. Now that said, we do have circumstances if you're a parent, guardian, advocate for somebody who lives in Delaware, particularly a parent or a guardian, of somebody who is a Delaware resident, then obviously your input is every bit as much needed and as much desired. But with regards to the Brain Injury Trust Fund, those funds are for Delawareans only. But again, it's, we are welcome to entertain and listen to anybody. So if somebody out there is looking for something in their state, we can do our best to try to provide some level of information and referral to what other states might be doing as well.
All right. You guys rock. I could talk to you guys all day long about that. If I got to do this all day long for work, I would be like that. Happiest man alive. Like it's like talking to people all day long and.
That's what we can't, Manny.
Gosh.
Emmanuel, I think you're so good at this. That sounds like a goal to me.
It is. I'll have to tell you about that later.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about it.
That is awesome. Guys, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. I know I sat here like a bump on a log most of the day, but I was just kind of taking in the information that you guys gave us and learning more about you. Personally, I know we haven't had a lot of interaction, me and John, and then today was the first day I met Amy. So thank you for coming. And I do believe we'll be able to post all of these links that you guys talked about with where we post this video. Is that correct, Manny?
That is correct.
Awesome. So I think with that, we are finished.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much for having us, Laura.